Hey there. You know how much you love SpaceX and their launches? Well, their latest one, Bandwagon-2, is definitely worth a deep dive. We've talked about the growing space jump problem before, and this mission brings up some interesting questions around that. But first, imagine 30 satellites hitching a ride on a Falcon 9 rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base. It's more than just a cool visual. There's a whole business strategy behind it. So, how does SpaceX make money from these launches? Who's paying for a ride to space? And what are these satellites actually doing up there?
Yeah, what's fascinating is that SpaceX isn't just launching stuff into space. They're turning it into a profitable and surprisingly accessible business. It's opening up opportunities for a whole range of players.
Okay, so let's break it down. First
Yeah.
off, SpaceX has this diverse fleet of launch vehicles. The Falcon 9, their reliable workhorse, the Falcon Heavy for those bigger payloads, Dragon, designed to transport cargo and, more importantly, humans to the International Space Station. And they're even developing Starship for those ambitious deep space missions. This particular launch, though, was all about the Falcon 9.
Yeah, and the Falcon 9's reusability is a cornerstone of their business model. Traditional rockets were one-and-done launch, deploy, gone. But the Falcon 9's first stage booster actually comes back to Earth, ready to be prepped for another flight. That dramatically lowers the cost per launch, making space more accessible.
So it's like the difference between a one-time taxi fare and owning a car you can use again and again. And it's not just about satellites. The Falcon 9 also plays a crucial role in sending astronauts to the ISS.
Exactly. And that journey of a Dragon capsule to the space station is pretty remarkable. It involves these carefully timed engine burns to adjust its path, maneuvers to approach and dock with the ISS, and even jettisoning that trunk section for a smooth arrival.
All right, back to this Bandwagon-2 mission. SpaceX calls this their second dedicated rideshare mission to a mid-inclination orbit. So what exactly is rideshare in the context of space?
Think of it as a carpool for satellites. Instead of a single customer booking an entire rocket for their satellite, you have multiple customers sharing the ride and splitting the cost. This makes launching satellites much more affordable, especially for smaller companies or organizations.
So it's like democratizing access to space.
Yeah.
And who were the passengers on this particular space carpool?
We have a real mix here. There's a reconnaissance satellite for the South Korean military, 3 radio frequency intelligence satellites from HawkEye 360, and a Finnish company called Iceye sent up 2 of their synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, imaging satellites. Then you have others like Space, Tomorrow.io, True Anomaly, and Think Orbital, each with their own unique objectives for their satellites.
This is what I find so fascinating. It's not just about launching these metal boxes into space. It's about the incredible range of things they can do up there. You've got everything from military intelligence to weather forecasting, environmental monitoring, and even space-based internet. These satellites are literally shaping our world in profound ways. And the fact that SpaceX can launch so many of them at once, thanks to rideshare, is game-changing. But what does this all mean for SpaceX's bottom line?
Well, this is where the brilliance of their business model comes in. By offering rideshare, they're catering to a much wider customer base. Think about it. A small startup developing cutting-edge Earth observation technology might not be able to afford a dedicated launch. But with rideshare, they can get their satellite into orbit at a fraction of the cost.
So they're essentially tapping into a whole new market, making space accessible to players who couldn't even dream of it before?
Exactly, and that's driving the growth of the commercial space sector. We're seeing more and more private companies, startups, and research institutions getting involved, which is leading to a surge in innovation and investment. It's truly remarkable to witness this rapid evolution of the space industry.
It definitely feels like we're at the cusp of a new era in space exploration. But with all these launches happening, we can't ignore the potential downsides. More satellites, even with reusable rockets, could potentially mean more space junk.
That's an important point to consider. While rideshare programs offer a more cost-effective and efficient way to launch satellites, the sheer number of objects we're putting into orbit is adding to the already concerning issue of space debris. It's a complex problem with no easy solutions.
We've spoken before about how crowded it's getting up there. What are your thoughts on balancing the excitement of all this new space activity with the need to manage the risks associated with space debris?
It's a delicate balance indeed. On one hand, we have this incredible opportunity to explore and utilize space like never before. But on the other, we need to be responsible stewards of this environment, ensuring its sustainability for future generations. And that brings us to the financial side of things. SpaceX has developed specific programs tailored for these rideshare missions. You have the Transporter series for sun-synchronous orbits, which are great for certain types of Earth observation. And then there's Bandwagon for those mid-inclination orbits, positioned at a specific angle relative to the equator. These are ideal for other types of observation and communication satellites.
So they're really targeting specific markets and needs within the space industry. It sounds like a smart business strategy.
Absolutely. They recognized that mid-inclination was the most popular orbit after sun-synchronous, so they created a dedicated program to cater to that demand. They're even planning to launch 2 Bandwagon missions per year to keep up.
Wow, so it's almost like they're running a regular space bus service now.
Oh.
But let's go back to the cost effectiveness of all this. How does rideshare actually translate into savings for their customers?
Well, think about it. A dedicated Falcon 9 launch can cost tens of millions of dollars. But by sharing the rocket with other payloads, companies can significantly reduce their expenses. SpaceX offers different pricing tiers based on the size and mass of the satellite and the type of orbit desired. For smaller satellites on rideshare missions, the cost can be as low as a couple of $1 million.
That's still a significant investment. But it's a far cry from the traditional costs associated with launching a satellite. This really does open up a world of possibilities for smaller players.
It does, and it's not just about the initial launch cost. SpaceX's focus on reusability also plays a major role in keeping expenses down. By reusing the Falcon 9 booster, they're able to offer even more competitive prices, further disrupting the traditional space industry model.
It's like they're constantly finding ways to make space more affordable and accessible. But what about the other side of the equation? How profitable are these rideshare missions for SpaceX itself?
That's where things get interesting. While they haven't publicly disclosed specific profit margins for their rideshare program, it's safe to assume they're doing quite well. By maximizing the payload capacity of each launch, they're essentially increasing their revenue per mission. And with the growing demand for rideshare services, their launch manifest is filling up quickly, indicating a healthy stream of income.
So it's a win-win situation. Customers get access to space at a more affordable price, and SpaceX benefits from increased revenue and a strong market position.
But it's not just about profits, is it? There's also the whole aspect of technological advancement and innovation.
Exactly. SpaceX's success is not only due to their savvy business model, but also their constant drive to push the boundaries of space technology. Their reusable rockets, efficient launch operations, and innovative rideshare program are all testaments to their commitment to making space more accessible and sustainable. You mentioned sustainability earlier. What steps are being taken to mitigate this space debris issue? Are these innovations and cost savings perhaps leading to a new problem?
It's a valid concern, and one that the industry is actively addressing. There's growing awareness of the need for responsible space practices. Some companies are developing deorbiting systems for their satellites, ensuring they safely burn up in the atmosphere at the end of their lifespan. Others are exploring active debris removal technologies, essentially cleaning up existing space junk.
That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie. It's amazing to see how these challenges are driving new technological breakthroughs. But going back to the business side, what are some of the potential economic implications of this boom in the commercial space sector?
The implications are vast. We're already seeing job creation in areas like aerospace engineering, satellite manufacturing, and data analysis. As the sector continues to grow, we can expect to see spin-off industries emerging, new applications for space technology being developed, and increased investment in research and development.
So it's not just about launching satellites. It's about fostering a whole new ecosystem around space exploration and its applications. It sounds like a pretty exciting time to be involved in this field.
It is, and it's not just about governments and large corporations anymore. With the lowered barriers to entry, we're seeing startups and smaller companies playing a more prominent role, driving innovation and bringing fresh perspectives to the table. The future of space exploration is becoming increasingly diverse and dynamic.
This all makes me think back to our earlier conversation about space junk. Do you think these advancements in debris mitigation are keeping pace with the rapid growth of the space industry?
That's a difficult question to answer definitively. While there's definitely progress being made in debris mitigation technologies, the rate at which we're launching objects into space is also accelerating. It's a race against time, and it requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders to ensure a sustainable future for space exploration.
This all leads us to the big question. What does the future hold for SpaceX and the broader space industry?
SpaceX has some ambitious plans. They're pushing ahead with Starship, their next-generation spacecraft designed for deep space missions to Mars and beyond. They're also expanding their Starlink satellite internet constellation, aiming to provide global broadband coverage. And they're constantly innovating, seeking new ways to make space travel more efficient, affordable, and accessible.
It seems like they're really aiming to revolutionize how we interact with space. What do you think are some of the most exciting possibilities on the horizon?
One area I'm particularly interested in is the potential for space-based manufacturing and resource extraction. Imagine being able to manufacture products in microgravity or mine asteroids for valuable resources. These concepts, once confined to science fiction, are starting to become tangible possibilities.
That's incredible. But we also need to consider the ethical and regulatory challenges that come with these advancements.
Yeah.
How do we ensure responsible practices as we venture further into space?
You're absolutely right. As we push the boundaries of what's possible, we need to establish clear ethical guidelines and international regulations for space exploration and resource utilization. We need to ensure that space remains a shared resource for all of humanity, and that its exploration is conducted in a safe, sustainable, and responsible manner.
It's a lot to think about, and it highlights the complexity of this new era of space exploration. But one thing's for sure, it's a fascinating time to be following these developments. It feels like we're on the verge of like a whole new chapter in the space story.
It really does. And a big part of that story is going to be how we navigate the business and financial side of things.
Right. We've talked about SpaceX's innovative approach with reusable rockets and rideshare programs. But what about the bigger picture? How does this all impact the global economy?
Well, as space becomes more accessible and commercially viable, we're going to see a ripple effect across various industries, everything from telecommunications and navigation to Earth observation and resource management is going to be transformed.
It's like opening up a whole new frontier for innovation and economic growth.
Exactly. And with that comes new opportunities for investment, job creation, and technological advancement. We're already seeing countries around the world vying for a piece of the space pie.
It's fascinating to think about the potential economic power of space and how it could shift the global landscape.
Absolutely. And it's not just about governments and large corporations anymore. The private sector is playing an increasingly important role, with companies like SpaceX leading the charge.
So what's next for SpaceX? Where do they go from here?
Well, their sights are set on Mars, with their Starship program aiming to establish a human presence on the red planet. But it's not just about exploration. They're also focused on building infrastructure in space, things like field depots and orbital platforms.
It sounds like they're really laying the groundwork for a future where space travel becomes more routine and accessible.
That's the vision. And along the way, they're developing technologies that could have spin-off applications here on Earth. Things like advanced materials, propulsion systems, and life support systems.
So it's not just about reaching for the stars. It's about bringing those benefits back down to Earth.
Exactly. And that's what makes this such an exciting time to be following the space industry. We're witnessing history in the making, with companies like SpaceX pushing the boundaries of what's possible and paving the way for a future that was once only imagined in science fiction.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. Thanks for guiding us through all this.
It's been my pleasure. It's always fascinating to discuss these topics with someone as enthusiastic about space as you are.
And to you listening out there, keep looking up and stay curious about the incredible things happening in space. The future is out there, and it's closer than you think.